For real? For real?
Please excuse the messy background. Like,
No.
because it looks really messy.
It does not. It looks fine.
Look, there's like tissue right there.
For real.
I mean, it could be worse.
I
It could be like snot tissue.
can't believe there's tissue in a bedroom.
I can't believe we live in a house and it's
Oh
not
my
always
God!
clean.
It looks all lived in. Like people
It
like
just-
do
it looks
stuff
like I'm
there.
not doing my job by keeping it clean.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay.
You're fine. So, it's late. I'm tired. But by request, we're going to do this video because it occurs to me.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. I don't think we've ever just been like 100% honest. Like, we did a video a couple of years ago. It was like, oh, here's how we met, and we left out so much stuff. So, today we're just going to talk. Like, this video is going to be long. Like, long. But by request, this is the story of us. This is how it started. You want to start? I mean, you were there.
Are you from my point of view?
I mean, yeah. You know what? Well, I guess there are some parts from my point of view that I would have to give you.
So I guess I can start, and then like I guess it would honestly be like up until a point there will be different points of views. So
Okay.
you'll do it like that.
Like I don't know. For me,
I thought I was going first.
you want to go? Okay. Well, where does it start for you?
From mobile.
Okay.
So should it start first? So should you start first?
I can start.
We're being
That's
really
fine.
indecisive right now.
We
This
are.
is like every day for every little thing.
It starts for me. I want to say it's July 2008. My father had been gone for about a month. He passed away from apparent heart attack. That's a completely different story. And I was in what you could describe as an abusive relationship. I mean, she didn't beat on me or anything, but it was very emotionally draining. And she had introduced me to a site called Fun for Mobile to get free ringtones for your phone. And I was like, hey, I wonder what this site would look like if I didn't go to the app. I guess it really wasn't even an app then. It was just like, you can go to this website on your phone. So I go and there are like all these profiles and stuff and like people with pictures. So I was like, oh, wow, okay, I'll set one up too. And I see this little mug and I was like, oh, hey, baby, damn, you look good. You hella fine. What's up? And she didn't say nothing to me at all.
I don't even remember that message.
You know,
honestly.
and it's fine. And I move on with my life. You know, it's just, I sent her a message, and that was really much the end of that.
Really much the end.
Really much the end of that. So you fast forward maybe 4 months, maybe 5. It's in November, and I have managed to get out of this emotionally abusive relationship, and my son and I are sleeping on the floor of one of my best friend's apartment. It's not the best, but I just got this real decent job. And I was like, I'm going to save up my money. I'm going to get the hell out of here. Don't know where I'm going. Don't know what I'm going to do, but going to get the hell out of here. So I'm saving up, and like just commute to this job was like kicking my ass. I would have to leave at like 7 o'clock in the morning just to get there like by 9:30 or 10. It was such a mess. But on my off day, I'm on Fun for Mobile on his computer, and again, I'll come across this mug. Oh, here she is, and she's got on this Supergirl shirt, and she's just so cute, and she's looking down. It's like, you can't see any of this or anything. It's just, here's this girl, and she's looking down, and she looks so sad, and I just reach out to her, and I'm like, hey, what's up? And we just, from there, started talking.
I guess for me, I had like, it was like one of my first like little cell phones, and you know, that was before like apps and stuff like that, where you would have, like, I had Metro, so it's like you have to go like Metro Web to like go to
I remember Metro Web. Wow.
So I remember going to Fun for Mobile, and I would go there to download like ringtones and stuff, because that's what I knew it for. Then I discovered you can have a profile, so it's like, oh, you know, I set up a profile. And at the time, I was 14 years old.
You don't say. Oh, this just got spicy.
Spicy, risky. So So yeah, I set up a profile, and I remember I put up a picture of myself, like as my profile picture. And I discovered that, people like chat on here, and it was like kind of like a bootleg Facebook type deal before Facebook was like a big deal.
MySpace was still a big deal at the time.
MySpace was still a big deal, yeah. And I started getting like a lot of like friend requests, a lot of messages, and a lot of it was just like horny guys, reaching
like,
out.
Hey, baby, you hella fine.
Yeah,
what's up?
it was a lot of that. Like, true story, I even got like a weird, creepy message from like this older guy who was like living in Detroit. And he's like, yeah, I'll fly you out to Detroit and you can stay with me and I'll keep you in my basement until you're of age. That was pretty creepy.
Fun.
So I set up this profile and everything, and I was getting a ton of messages, like daily, just like a lot of messages. And apparently he sent me a message like the first time he did, and I didn't even remember
Just ignored me.
getting a message from him
Fine.
at all.
There was nothing memorable about the message.
I probably ignored it because he said something typical like that. And then I remember getting the message one day from this guy. I remember his profile picture, he had on like camouflage and had like this wrestling belt. And I remember thinking like, I remember thinking like, who's this guy? Like it was nothing, at first it was nothing about him that was just like, oh yeah, like I would send him a message or anything like that. It was just some guy. And I don't even remember what you said in the message, but I remember thinking he was really sweet. I remember responding, and I knew right away that he was older, but I didn't want him to know that I was younger.
So she lied.
Because he was interested, and he was really nice. And, again, at first I wasn't thinking like, oh yeah, this is going to be my boyfriend or anything like that. It was just, oh, it's a really nice guy, and he's really nice to talk to, and I want to continue to talk to him. But if I tell him my real age, that's going to be a problem. So I did lie about my age, and we talked. How long did we talk on?
I sent you that message. I don't remember what I said. And after a couple of back and forth messages, I was like, all right, look, we about to get off of here. Give me your number.
Yeah.
And she gave me she called me. I gave her my number, and she called me.
Restricted.
And she called me blocked. And the first thing out of her mouth, she's like, hi, Daddy. It's me, Asia. I'll never forget that.
He told me because
my name was Daddy.
Well, I asked him. I remember asking him what his name was. He said, you can call me the Daddy. And I remember thinking like, oh, okay, haha, yeah, the Daddy. That's cute or whatever. And I called him, and I was like, hi, Daddy. It's me, Asia. And the first thing he said to me was, what'd you say? He said, the first thing we're going to do is you're going to hang up the phone and you're going to call me not blocked. And I remember thinking like, who does he think he is? But I did it.
But she did it.
I did it. So I hung, and I called him blocked because again, this is some guy, I don't know you, and just in case I didn't want him to have my number. But I hung up and I did as he said, and I called him unrestricted.
And we talked for like hours.
We did.
Like hours. I remember I was like, so what do you do? What do you want to do? She was like, I'm going to Harvard. I'm going to be a record producer and a singer. I'm going to do music. And I was just like, look, why don't you just pick one thing that you really want to do and just do that? She was so mad.
Because I'm like, who are you? You don't even know me. I was so irritated with him for whatever reason. I couldn't stop talking to him because
I couldn't bring myself to tell this poor girl she was not going to Harvard.
I appreciate his honesty, and there was something about him. I think because he was so honest and blunt with me, it kind of drew me to him. But at the same time, who are you? You don't know me. You didn't tell me to focus on one thing. I want to do all these things. He was right, but, felt like he didn't have a right to say that because he didn't know me. He didn't know anything about me.
Now, at this point, no, I'm 33 years old. She told me she was 18, so I was like, oh, yeah, all right, that's what's up, It wasn't like, oh, she was going to come here or I was going to go there. It was just, hey, here's this 18-year-old. And honestly, I was in a bad place in my life emotionally. My father was gone. My mother had died a few years before that. We had been homeless. I had just gotten out of a shelter, say, in June. And the shelter ended up putting us out because we stayed too long. and my son and I were sleeping in like a high school gym like over the summer because there was just nowhere for us to go.
I'm sorry.
It was a mess. So I'm in this bad place, and here's this girl who's telling me how great I am and telling me how good I look and how awesome I am. It's like, how could I not fall in love with you? Like, don't get me wrong. I knew from the moment I saw the picture, I knew she was something special. I did. And I always tell you the story. It's like, oh yeah, I knew I loved you from that picture, and I kind of did, but also I was in an emotionally fucked up place. So a lot of that probably had to do with I was just clinging to somebody because I needed somebody. But by the end of that very first phone call, I was like, I love you.
Yeah, he did.
And she was like, oh, I love you too. But
I didn't mean it
she
at
didn't mean
first.
it.
Like, at first, when he said it, it's just like, oh, and I didn't want it to end. And I felt like if I said, oh, look, I don't really know how I feel yet, then it would have ended. And I didn't want it to, but I didn't know what I was feeling yet. So
then
I
we
love you
started
too.
having lots of phone sex.
Lots of phone sex.
Like, lots of phone sex.
And it was interesting for me because a little background about me, I was extremely sheltered. Like, my parents were super Christian. I was very sheltered. And that was a completely new experience for me. And at this point, my mom, siblings, and I were living in California, and we're originally from Detroit, Michigan.
I was from Michigan too. By
Yeah,
the way.
he happened to be from Michigan
I
as
was
well.
still in Michigan at the time. So.
And my parents were in the middle of getting a divorce. So we moved out here and everything. And, my uncle had passed away recently, and we were just kind of at an awkward state where we weren't really doing that well, and we were living with different people. And around the time I met him, we were staying with a couple, and there was like a room, like kind of in the attic. It was a really nice room.
But it was still just a room.
Yeah, it was a room. It was actually, it was like it's like you went up the stairs, and there was like this area where like the bed was and stuff. And then there were like these two like glass doors. It was really nice. And you go through, and it's like a little bathroom. There's like a TV, little lounge area. And I used to go over in that area while my sister was like sleeping in the other room, and I would sit on the floor, and we would have phone sex.
Fun times.
And I didn't know what phone sex was.
Oh, well, you were a pro. Don't make it sound like I didn't manipulate her. She was into it. She knew.
What happened was, like, he would say things that were really nice, and I would get into it. But again, I didn't know that this was phone sex. I just knew that, it's like, oh, these are things that are really nice, and it makes me feel a certain way. And that's all we really had. And it was like, it was just nice. It was a completely new experience for me. And like for most people, phone sex isn't a big deal. But for me, it was a huge deal because I was always sheltered. I didn't know this existed, especially with this kind of man.
So that went on for about 2 weeks until finally I was just like, you know what? You need to come to Michigan.
Yeah.
This is not going. It's like, you're an adult. I'm an adult. Just I'll pay for your ticket. Just come on home, and we'll work it out. She was like, oh, I'm really 17. So it's like, okay, you know what? That's fine.
I said 16.
You said 16?
16.
No, you said 17
No,
because you were going to be 18 in the coming January.
No,
so I was like, I can wait a month.
No, when we originally were sending messages before we talked on the phone, I told him I was 17. And, it was like, oh, that's awesome because my birthday was in January. We met in November, and it's like, okay, a couple of months I'll be legal.
Yeah,
but then I told you I was 16.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's all right. We'll work it out. So I said,
a year and a
what?
couple of months, we can do that.
It's like if I mean it, if I really mean it, then I'll stick around. So I told her, it's like, all right, well, I'm just gonna come to you. There was nothing going on in Michigan for me, so it's like, well, I'll come to you, and I'll always remember. I bought like the plane ticket, and I took a picture of it. She didn't believe me, and it's like I'm telling her my itinerary for what's. It's like, look. I'm gonna come, and she just didn't believe. We had set up a time and a place to meet, and she was like, I don't believe you. And I called her from the airport. Say, babe, I'm on the plane. I sent her pictures from the plane. She didn't believe me. We got off the plane and we had a layover in Phoenix. So I called her from Phoenix. I was like, hey, I'm in Arizona. You know, there's one more plane over. I'll be in California. She still didn't believe me. She was just like, whatever. I've heard this before. We get to California, and setting up the whole thing with the roommates is a completely different story. We'll skip that. But just say I secured somewhere for my son and I to be. I left Michigan with about $5,000 in my pocket from the job I had just left. So I call her when I get, hey, I'm in California. Everything's all beautiful here. And she's like, whatever. So I settle in with my new roommates, and I give her a call, and it's like, okay, you know, I'm planning on seeing you this Wednesday. You know, I'm going to meet you at this mall that you told me I could go to. And she's like, yeah, whatever. So me and my son go, and we had to get on the bus because she was in Sacramento. I ended up in Davis, California, which I didn't realize was much further away from Sacramento than I wanted to be. So I had to get on this bus. It was like an hour-long ride, too. It was so weird. And I actually get to the mall, and I call her, and I'm like, oh, wow, you have got, like, trains here, because we didn't have trains in Michigan. They had, like, this light rail system, and I was like, oh, these are so cool, and she's like, whatever, nigga.
You could Google it.
Like, you look this up, and then there was a big guitar outside the mall. I was like, oh, the big guitar outside the mall, and she's like, whatever. She didn't believe me. I walked up to her.
No, wait, back up before you go there. Before this man came to California, we were on the phone, and he's like, yeah, when I get out there, I just want to warn you about something. I'm like, okay, what is it? And he's like, well, I kind of got this limp, and people, you know, tell me all the time that it's, like, really obvious and looks kind of arrogant. So I'm thinking, like, okay, he's crippled, but that's okay. I still love him. You know, I'm completely fine with it. So when we're at the mall, I'm waiting for him to show up, and honestly, I'm looking for like a man that's limping, that's like crippled.
Like I wasn't a paraplegic.
Well,
I have a bad knee.
Dramatic. Like he made it seem like he was gonna be like limping around, and I was looking for, you know, like somebody who was handicapped, honestly. And he came just walking like all confident, like, well, that's obviously not him. I didn't want you to be thrown
off. It's like, okay, he's got this kind of like a limp. It was like a swagger kind of thing. I didn't want you to be
He doesn't have a limp though.
Well, see, you're used to it now.
But you don't. I mean, you have a certain walk about you, but it's not a limp.
She didn't even believe me. I had to like physically walk 3 feet away from her and then call her on the phone and say, hey, see, it's me. Here we are. So, wow, are we being honest? Are we telling it all? Like,
I guess
okay,
so.
So like, so we're hanging out by this light rail station, and we're making out in public, like heavy, like just like all over each other. Got to mention the kissing booth. We're in the kissing booth, and like we're making out hard in the kissing booth. And I'm glad that we didn't do anything in the booth because there was a camera on the outside, and people could see what was going on. So I'm glad she didn't like grab my dick or something. That would have been a mess. So we're making out hard and heavy, and it's beautiful. And I'm okay with the fact that she's only 16. It's like, you know, whatever. We shouldn't be kissing and stuff, whatever. And I don't know, how long was it between when I got there? It was January. I want to say it was January 8th when I got there. Somewhere between there and Valentine's Day, she was like, oh, hey, guess what? I'm 14. I was like, oh, you bitch. I'm here now. Like, goddamn. But you know what? I love you. You know, we'll kiss and hold hands till you turn 18. We got it. No problem. Cool. So for Valentine's Day, I remember she was going to come over, and I borrowed my roommate's car to go pick her up. So I go and I pick her up, and she comes to the house, and we didn't have sex. There was no sex, but there was a lot of making out, and there was a lot of oral sex there. She climbed the wall trying to escape me as she was unprepared for what it was going to be like. Yeah. It was fantastic.
I had never been touched before. I'd never been anything.
You know, you did great. It was a beautiful time. We didn't have sex. I resisted the urge to have sex. I mean, oral sex.
I told him, mind you, at this time, again, super Christian, and I told him, it's like, I don't want to have sex until I'm married. And he was completely okay with it. And I was shocked because I'm like, most guys will want to do that.
I didn't care. It's like, but at this point, I love this woman, and it was like, I've committed myself. I'm here. Why? That's fine. So she heads home after Valentine's Day, and I'm laying in bed, and I'm like, yeah, this is
The
great.
Claddagh ring. You didn't talk about the Claddagh ring.
Oh yeah, I bought her a Claddagh ring.
You looked at my hand looking for it.
I did.
I
It's not there anymore.
My fingers are too fat now, so I want just my wedding ring.
I'm part Irish. Got some French in there. My father was white, French, and Irish. My mother was just black. So I got like the worst of both worlds. I have no rhythm, but I also have really nice hair. You know. But I bought her a Claddagh ring because it was a piece of my heritage. This was like the only part of me that was also my dad. And I gave her the ring, and I cried, and she cried, and she was like, "Oh, it's so beautiful." So I'm laying in bed, and I'm feeling good about the future. Like, here we go. Nothing could possibly go wrong. We're together, and we're happy. And the next morning, I get a call from her mother. Because Aisha decided to go home and tell her mother everything.
Okay, so let me explain. I went home and I was just so overjoyed. Like, I mean, this man, I'm happy and extremely sheltered. And I told my mother everything. And the idea of there being something that I was hiding from my mother, like, devastated me because I was such a good girl. I didn't do anything bad. I didn't sneak around. I was a good girl. I did as I was told. I went to church every Sunday. I went to youth group every Wednesday. And it's like, actually, to see him the first time, or actually every time for a while, I went to a youth group called ZG. Zero Gravity. And it was on Wednesday nights, and I would take the light rail to go. And I think it started at like 6 or 7, and I would always leave a couple of hours early. And, you know, my mom was fine with it because, you know, to her knowledge, I was like just going to the mall, hanging out a little bit, or going to Starbucks or something before, you know, I went to ZG. But really, I was going to see him. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I would just skip ZG altogether and just see him. So I got home that night, and I remember just feeling so guilty, but at the same time being so happy. And I was like, well, you know, I'm just going to tell my mom. Like, oh my God. So I told her, I was just like, hey, so I met this guy, and he moved out here to be with me, and he's 33. And she flipped out hard. And
I understand why she would flip out. Oh, it sounds scary.
She flipped out, and I remember she demanded to call him. And I remember as soon as I told her, I remember regretting it, like, oh, this was a mistake.
It was.
And she called him, and they had it out. She had some words, and he was just like, I love her.
And I'm just like, I remember there are two things I remember from that conversation very distinctly. One, I told your mother, if you would allow it, I would marry this woman today. Yeah. And she was like, oh, that's never going to happen. And also, if you can ask her now, she'll never admit it. But she said, if you really love her, you will wait. And that's
until she's 18.
And then the light bulb over my head went off. It's ding, you're right. You're right. I'll wait. And her mother said that we could never talk again. And I think for like 2 days, I didn't hear anything. And I remember I was walking the Dollar Tree. Cause I was going to get cleaning supplies because my roommates were shitty. And she called, and I was just like, look, I love you. Why did you tell her? What were you thinking? She's like, oh, but it's my mom. It's like, you know what? It's cool.
I didn't lie to my mom.
I love you. I will wait. It's fine. If this is what you need, I'll wait. It's cool.
And that part of the story now.
So we ended up talking on the phone a lot, like all the time, like for hours. I don't know what we talked about.
It took a while before I could see him in person again, just because I had to kind of wait until my mom kind of trusted me again.
But we would end up sneaking out and like going out. We would go to like Motel 6.
That was our thing. Motel 6 was our thing. 1, it was cheap. 2, it was privacy because he was living with different people at the time too. And it's like we weren't going to be able to go there.
It's like at that point I left the roommates I was with, and for a brief moment me and my son were just in like this motel room as we transitioned to wherever we were going to end up next. Also, I was working on a project for ABC Family. We won't even go down that road, but that took a lot of my time. She came to set once to see what we were doing, which was really nice. And I was like, "Oh yeah, my girlfriend's coming." And nobody questioned how old she was. It was just, "Oh, that's
I never looked my age.
He's the writer. His girlfriend's here. That's great." So it took a while before we could actually hang out, but we started going to Motel 6 a lot. I know what you're thinking, like, oh, we had sex. We would not have sex.
No,
it was a lot of groping and petting and heavy breathing. I remember we would go and we would buy a DVD player, and then we would get a movie from Redbox, and we would watch the movie, and we would cuddle and make out and stuff. And then when it was time for her to go, I would take the DVD player back.
We never finished
to get
the
the
movie.
No, we would
it
never.
was it was really an excuse, so it wouldn't be us just saying, "Hey, let's go and grope."
It was an excuse. But that happened quite a bit over that summer, and my son went back to Michigan for the summer to see his biological mother. That's a completely different story. And we were at a Motel 6, and we're making out heavy, and she cuts me this look. She's like, "We're gonna do it." And I'm like, "We're not gonna do it, babe. We're not gonna." She's like, "No, we're gonna do it." So we're in position. I'm laying on top of her, and she's like, "Yeah, give it to me." And I'm like, "No. Are you sure? Is this what you want? Are you sure this is what..." I mean, I didn't want to say beg, but I pleaded with you. "Are you sure? Are you
for like an hour?" Sure? And I'm like,
"We don't have to do this. I don't want you to feel pressured. I'm fine with what we're doing. We don't..." And she was like, "Just do it."
This is why I wanted to do it so bad. I made it very clear in the beginning that I did not want to do anything until I was married, just because, again, super Christian at the time. And the reason I decided that I wanted to do it was, one, it was kind of me being rebellious, honestly. But mostly I started looking at the big picture. It's like, I love this man, and I knew that I wanted to be with him. I knew that I wanted him to be my first and only. I knew that I wanted to marry him. In my eyes, just like, well, what am I waiting for? And in the moment, it was a special moment, and I felt like I was stopping myself from doing anything from the fear of, disappointing my mom, or feeling like I'm being a bad Christian, or God will be mad at me. And I just decided, this is what I want. So if it's something I want, I'm just going to go for it. I trusted him completely.
We should also note that we almost did it in the bathroom at like a Baskin Robbins once.
We did.
We were making out hard, and she was like, "Just put it in me. Let's do it." That's like, babe, we are in a bathroom at a store. Your first time is not going to be in a store. I refuse. I need your first to be special.
And the first time was very special. It was special because I was doing it with somebody I loved and cared about, and somebody who felt the same about me. And I never had any regrets about having sex before I was married, because it was with him.
Let's cut this at a half an hour, and we'll come back and we'll do more. So We've got about 2 minutes here. And I remember I videotaped it. I don't know what possessed me. I had bought a camera, and I videotaped us doing it. It sounds so creepy when you say it, but it was meant to be this real special thing.
And it was.
It was a beautiful moment. I remember she was just so impressed that, like, afterwards when we were done, she laid there and she cried. And I just kind of held her, and I was like, "I still love you. Nothing changed. I'm not going to flip out on you because we had sex." It's like, we're still here, and it's still us, and I'm going to marry you. It's like, I used to tease her all the time whenever she would say something like doubtful. I'd be like, "I don't want to talk to Asia Jordan. I need to talk to Asia Harris, because my wife would never say that to me." She'd be like, "You're right, Daddy," and then we would end up doing whatever we were going to do. And we must have went to Motel 6 over that summer like half a dozen times. At least, just that summer.
Okay, we would go to I think it's fair to say at least once a week. Sometimes once every couple of weeks, but it was a ritual for us. And I mean, it wasn't
the only place we could go to just be alone.
It was just to be alone. And honestly, we didn't just do that. Like, we went to the mall, we went shopping a lot. Like, we went to the movies a lot. Yeah, we did. He spoiled me. He would always take me shopping, and it wasn't a gold digger.
About the phone.
Oh,
The phone,
yeah.
okay, you know what?
But we should cut
just
it?
push it.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna come back. I'm gonna tell the story about the phone. That's hilarious.